Hi, welcome. What's on your mind?
To be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely sure. I just was interested in what you might have to say. I would not call myself a Christian either. I was raised Catholic. I have some members of my family who are still very devout Catholic. Um, but I'm now in my mid 50s and turned away from that at about 18. And over the years, I haven't so much tried to explore personally, maybe learn a little bit about other faiths, but not really explore them for myself, but tried to almost design my own faith, tried to see what I could really believe in. Um,
Right.
and so I guess the term for what I am would be a deist.
All right.
I'm assuming you're probably more familiar with that to a certain degree than I am, if this is the conversations you like to have.
Um, I generally know what a deist is, but I'm some of the labels. I don't really like to get too bogged down in the labels. But so you believe in a supernatural power? You tell me what it means to you.
Well, so there's been probably several incarnations, and I kind of feel I'm personally someone who doesn't feel like I need to know everything. I need to know the right way.
That's a good
I can
idea.
be wrong and be entirely okay with it. So I do believe that there is maybe some kind of creator. I've looked at things, I work in healthcare. I've looked at things like just the complexity of DNA, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like certain things had to be kind of deliberate. At the same time, I often think of us collectively as a bit of an ant farm or a science experiment um, for a different entity,
Right.
where we were kind of given everything that we needed to be successful and thrive, and but there's not a lot of intercession. We're kind of left to our own devices, and if we succeed, great, and if we fail, I guess it's a failed experiment, so to speak. um and
Yeah, I
and
got I got a
I'm
lot
okay
in
with that.
common with what you're saying for sure. A lot of that resonates with me.
So at the same time, I've felt on a more spiritual side of it, like, and again, we're failing, but we are collectively part of something greater. And
Totally agree with you.
what we put out and what we take in and how we chart our paths in the world. And it doesn't have to be large monumental things. It doesn't have to be, either great services or great accomplishments, but it fuels a collective God. Um,
Okay.
and again, I don't have to be right. And sometimes how I feel about those perspectives even maybe shifts a little bit from day to day. I have friends who I grew up with, and of course, I was a teenager in the 80s. And at that time, I think my generation on the whole was very kind of oppositional to our parents. And I'm very surprised by how many of my peers, cohorts, have kind of gone right back in the opposite direction. And I'm not saying it's a matter of being for or against, it's just where we started mentally and where many people
Right.
have ended up is a very bizarre path to me. But a girlfriend who I knew who grew up without any real religion um, became extremely religious, and in a
Mm.
very flawed way. I mean, she cherry picked which aspects she did, but she was very fervent in what she believed.
Right.
And when we were discussing it, and I was kind of telling her my perspective, she was like, "Well, you're just making your own religion." And I said, "Yeah, to a degree." The
Well, what's
things that
wrong with
I,
that?
well, to her, a
Christian,
tremendous amount.
like like you said, most Christians are either making it up or following in a path that was cherry picked, customized, whatever. So they
Yeah,
don't
well, for
realize
me,
that.
for me in my life, there's no problem with it. But you know, I said the other thing about the way that I believe is I don't use my belief system as either an excuse or a shield.
Mm,
And I feel like people of a lot of faiths do that. It's not just Christians. It just seems to be glaring here in our
right.
corner of the world, um, that it is Christians who excuse all of their behavior, all of their intolerance, um, on their Christian faith. And, you know,
True.
I know people who are very bright in many ways, but will tell me, you know, the world is 6,000 years old.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we are surrounded with a very, very unique flavor of Christianity here in America. I mean, there's several very unique flavors of Christianity here in America. Yeah. Let me tell you a little bit about. I think this would resonate with you because what you were telling me resonated with me a lot. So as a faithist, um, there is kind of a sort of a set belief system with being a faithist, but at the same time, we are highly encouraged to examine how all the religions are connected and how they all point back to the creator. So I'm looking at Native American, Buddhist, Hindu, you know, all these different things. And okay, so what you were saying, I'm going to start with the creator and work my way down to us. So it's maybe backwards than what you were saying.
Okay.
So the creator has, let's say, put in motion the systems of creation. So the motion, the light, the energy, the particles, the consciousness, everything has been established and is always expanding, and there's a cycle of creation and destruction. And as a world falls apart, after it gets old and falls apart, those elements get recycled into another world, you know, over millions and billions of years, or whatever the time is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you were saying about us sort of being left alone to our own devices, I mean that's very much what I believe, and in sort of like halfway there with you. But what I mean is the creator will sort of establish sort of a ruling government in the heavens. So you'll have you know, the title, the office of God as sort of a governorship or administrative office over either the whole world or just certain parts of the world, and they're there to govern, to inspire, to sort of garden this world, pull some weeds, you know, try and encourage growth, whatever they can to help us grow and mature. But they are supposed to be sort of left to their own wisdom. And so sometimes they make mistakes, and sometimes there'll be beings that think they can do a better job. And that's why you have all these different, you know, legends of these pantheons where, you know, there's strife amongst the gods, I guess, and there's alliances, and you know, all the different stuff that now we have as myth, you know, could very well be based on some form of reality or not. And the beings that are aligned with the creator, like I said, they're trying to inspire us to do better. And then you have the forces that are in trying to get us to go to the dark side. That's in a nutshell sort of the cosmic worldview of what a faithist kind of subscribes to.
Okay, so you definitely see there being, and I don't necessarily disagree, I just want to clarify, there being sentient entities.
Yeah, for sure. And like as far as the creator goes, I don't think anybody can comprehend that. I was thinking today, maybe the what is the creative force, you know, there's a lot of talk about everything is one and we're all part of the same consciousness. It could be that what is ascribed to the creator is just like the focal point of our consciousness, sort of guide, like a layer of our consciousness guiding us to our highest good. I really don't know what the creator is, but there's some form of intelligence, mapping it out, for the rest of us.
Yeah, I would certainly agree that I think that, whether that entity has kind of moved on past us or not, I would say that there was at least an initial plan, uh,
Mm-hmm.
initial direction that we were supposed to go. And I don't know if we've lost the map somewhere along the path, the concepts of good and evil. And this is why I kind of say, I feel like sometimes it's a collectiveness. We're part of something. And uh, the balance, the scales kind of swing sometimes wildly
Mm-hmm.
because there is, and growing up when I did, how I did, we were to a degree shielded. Um, we were left to our own devices somewhat, but we really just didn't come to an actualization of what is out there in the world until we were well into adulthood, I think. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel very sad for younger people today because I think their introduction to that was so much earlier. But there's things in this world that I just, and I'm sure most people feel this way. They genuinely can't comprehend how a person, a group of people can do certain things that are seemingly so heinous and glaringly so. I mean, it's not covert even.
Right.
Um, and there isn't some kind of, cosmic smiting, so to speak.
Yeah, that can be really a head scratcher, right? So, yeah, the dilemma is, if there's a loving creator, why isn't there more intervention? I understand that very well, that perspective.
And at the same time, if you engage with different sects of lots of religions, but in particular Christianity, you know, he's not really described as a loving God.
Oh, the God of the Bible? Oh no.
He's very vengeful um and then I go, okay, well, I don't know if he exists or not, but why would I want to be a part of that?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. More Christians should, really look at that question head on. And I mean, a lot of it's fear because that's what they know. And there's, a pretty big carrot and stick when it comes to that religion, hell, eternal heaven. From a faithist perspective, it sort of it kind of, all those wrinkles get ironed out. It makes a lot more sense. But again, I mean, I'm like with you. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm not trying to prove anything, but it resonates with me. So I'll share with you from a faithist perspective. The God of the Bible is not the creator. I'll just put it right. The God of the Bible, and there's lots of gods in the Bible. They would be classified as unwise gods, gods that are trying to accumulate worshipers, accumulate sacrifice, accumulate all the what we would call bad attributes of humanity: lust, greed, jealousy, anger, strife, all that stuff. and and so the first point is, none of the gods in the Bible are the creator. They are not even aligned with the creator. So the question is, why doesn't the creator intervene? This really helped me understand it. If it is this way, it makes sense. If the world is like a garden, right?
Hmm.
And the creator and his angels or his workers are sort of tending to the garden. Every season has a cycle, and every season's different. One season you may have a ton of weeds pop up, and another season you may not. Maybe you'll have, bugs or whatever. But every season is different and requires a different set of activity to make sure the fruit grows to maturity. Um, and depending on what kind of fruit, depends on if you're going to be weeding or not weeding. So when I look back on history and see all these cycles, we have like pretty large cycles and small cycles. Kingdoms come and go, wars come and go, and then the cycle of an individual life. You have all these different loops that keep occurring, these patterns that keep occurring. The reason, from a faithist point of view, why there isn't as much intervention as what we would like is because every cycle is designed to bring about lessons and to be able to grow and mature humanity as a whole. And so if you look back on our history as a whole, you can see, even though the cycle goes down, it goes down, but the lowest low is still higher than the previous lowest low. And we keep going up slowly over thousands and thousands of years. The other point that's different than Christianity is when our body dies, our journey does not end. So we may have a pretty rough time of it here in this physical body, and some really atrocities we're witness to or maybe have been done to us. But unlike Christianity, where you're either going to be stuck in hell for all of eternity or go to heaven, the journey is never ending. So you always have an opportunity for redemption. You always have an opportunity to grow and to go towards the light. One of the main principles of faithism is that we can't even recognize the light unless we've been into the darkness. And so the darkness is hard to go through because it's dark and miserable, but that's how we recognize the light. So,
Okay. Let me just get, for clarification's sake, so and I have read, I'm going to say in totality, maybe a third of the Bible. I have not read it cover to cover. I've, picked and choosed from different books of the Bible to read up on things. But you said there are many gods in the Bible. Who do you recognize as gods in the Bible?
I think they were all. I mean, if one of them was real, all of them are real. I mean, they're, for instance, Yahweh and Ashtoreth were partners at one point in the Bible. Ashtoreth was Yahweh's wife, consort. You have stories in the Bible where Yahweh and I think the Ammonite god do battle and Yahweh loses. There's but the thing is, it's been kind of edited a little bit, so the breadcrumbs are harder to find if you're not looking for them. But they're there. They're there. You can see the gods interacting with each other.
I imagine that a lot of Christians interpret Yahweh as being the same as God. They're the same entity. And maybe I'm wrong about that, or maybe different Christian sects see it differently. But
Well, I mean, I would say Yahweh is a god, but not the creator. And Christians would definitely defend him as being the creator of the world and also the universe. And I would make a distinction there.
Okay.
If Yahweh was real, he was a local deity, local being, sort of bound to this earth, so to speak, and doing his part to create followers and worshipers. Yeah, a lower storm god. Somebody put that in the comments. That's perfect. Yeah, Yahweh was a Canaanite deity or a Midianite deity, but most of the traditions of the Israelites came from Canaan, and they were just modified over time as they sort of changed their agenda as a nation.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I personally look at the Bible as being, an epic tale. Like so many. I mean, there are links even between some epic tales. And I don't say that to invalidate anyone's beliefs. Just, particularly when the different Christian sects, took and assembled the Bible in the way that they wanted to and left out many books. And I don't know if there's any particular Christian religion that did that more or less, but I would have to guess the Catholics would be right at the top of the list. Um, there's a book that was originally written that kind of is an offshoot of Genesis that goes into the Beowulf story.
Are you talking about the Jubilees or
It may be, but I don't know it by name.
There was another one, but Jasher. I think it was Jasher. I've read both Jubilees and Jasher, but it's been years. So you're saying that there's a lot of common out threads to the Beowulf poem?
Well, I'm saying that, people hold up the Bible as being the word of God and put it in, and some take it extremely literally. And I use it more, and I don't really use it much, but I mean, when I think in terms, because of how I was raised, of biblical stories that are parables, for living, I think of them as, here is sometimes a cautionary tale, or here is, and they were written to, I believe they were written to teach, or meant to teach morality and yes, indoctrinate some fear, in people for good behavior, rather than being literal. And just my connection to that is, if people are picking and choosing, if religions are picking and choosing books of the Bible, then you don't have a total picture of what was intended. If you believe it's all the word of God, or was meant to be the word of God, then you've chosen to take some out. And one of the ones that I'm, familiar with, and maybe there's many, many more, is the Beowulf story. And, just to be, and I'll probably say this incorrectly, but, when Cain killed Abel, Cain was cast out into the land of Nod. And then from there, my understanding of the story is, maybe he went from village to village, which I don't know how these villages were created, and was rejected, and ultimately ended up in some kind of land with, the best way I could describe it is almost like alien-like creatures. And married and mated, and they had, apparently he and his wife had incredibly beautiful daughters and hideous monster sons in the story. And then one of those daughters, I don't know who she ended up being with, but her child is Beowulf.
Interesting. Huh. You know what's a book that you might find interesting to read? I haven't read it, but there was a creator on TikTok who went by chapter on it. And this was years ago, so I'm not even sure if her channel is up. But there was a book called Escaping Eden that connected all these dots, stuff that you're bringing up. And this, he was a Christian pastor, and he started seeing holes in the Christian narrative, and he just went back to the text, and he's like, well, let's look at the text, let's look at history, let's look at archaeology, let's look at this stuff, let's connect the dots. And the Genesis, all of Genesis is not what we've been told.
No, and I mean, how could it be? It would be, it would be incomprehensible for us to truly even know the origin story. Of life on Earth.
No, I don't think we can know, but he was able to piece together not only, so the whole Israelite thing coming out of Canaan, Abraham was a Canaanite, worshiping Canaanite gods and deities, and, all of that mythology was at the very origin story of Israel. And so when you do textual comparisons with the cuneiform tablets and all the Canaanite and Akkadian, all this stuff. Like there's too much to even go into. You start seeing common themes like what you're talking about. And he put together a really good book about stuff that's in the Bible, but you'll never ever know about it if all you're doing is reading the Bible, because we've been so programmed to not even notice it.
Mm. Well, it certainly isn't written in modern language.
The King James Bible is definitely not. I mean, you can get better translations than King James, but most people still use the King James as kind of a standard, which is kind of sad considering there are better resources out there. Yeah.
Hmm. I don't know. It's all very interesting, and I feel like this is a journey that I'll probably go on for the rest of my life, and will probably die not having any resolution. And maybe that's why I've kind of come around to the idea of, live the best life you can, be as good as you can be, but understand and acknowledge when you're not so good.
I mean, that's brilliant. That's wisdom right there. That's taken me a long time to even have. I used to take a lot of pride in my certainty, growing up as a very conservative Christian. But there's a lot of comfort in being uncertain because you're free. You're free, you're not burdened by your, certainty.
Well, I feel like if I was meant to know, and I would know, we would know, and I just can't subscribe to the idea that there is one correct path,
Yeah.
or that people who do not follow a particular way are in any way subject to punishment for that.
Yeah.
I just hope that I don't know. I've become much more anti-religion, not anti-faith,
Yeah. I'm right
but
there with you on
much,
that.
much more anti-religion. And, I know people personally, um, of a variety of faiths who seem to have a really sincere connection with their beliefs. And I
Hmm.
think that's wonderful if it gives them something. And for a very long time, I tried to find that. You
Yeah.
know, when I was old enough, because my mother is a very, very devout Catholic, and
Hmm.
and she would tell me stories of experiences that she had personally, or that people she knew had personally, that they related to her, that seemed so supernatural. And I don't want to call any of these people liars.
Yeah.
Um, and I don't necessarily want to say they're delusional. And so because I believe that they were sincere and genuine, I for a good amount of time tried to be extremely introspective and thoughtful and try to almost manifest that for myself. And it didn't have to come in the form of Catholicism or Judaism or Baptist or anything else. It was just, if I commune with God in the way that I was raised to,
Right.
um, I would ultimately become so faithful and so devout that I could generate these experiences for myself. And that would be a confirmation for me,
Right.
in some way. And I could not do it. And again, if they've got this kind of head start on a spiritual enlightenment for them, then I don't want to call them liars, and B, good for them. Good for them.
Hmm.
I wish I saw that be the impetus for more from them. And maybe that sounds unfair to have that expectation of other people, but I'll be honest and say that I do.
Right.
My mother, her whole life, extremely devout Catholic, literally to this day, spends hours a day in prayer. She has a little spot on her back porch and she goes out and she says rosaries and she reads, literature and just kind of does what would be the Catholic version of meditation, I guess. And she's incredibly sincere. That has never one time motivated her to get off of her seat on the porch and go interact with people in a way that would be meaningful.
Yeah, it's sad. My lunch is just about over. Would you be wanting any book recommendations? Because I'm thinking of three. I already gave you the exiting,
Sure,
escaping Eden.
sure.
There's another guy on here on TikTok. You could look him up or buy his book. I'm reading his book right now. His name is Bob Beck, and his book is called "Original Sin is a Lie." Very good, very good book. I mean, it's like I don't even know how to describe it. It's like finding the balance between, you know, getting over all the trauma that a lot of us have from being in a very strict religion to still wanting to engage in spirituality and still wanting to engage in the texts, and in just sort of having a healthy relationship with, being spiritual and navigating the religions of the world. And the other book I would recommend is where the term faithist comes from. The book is called OWASP, and let's see if I can put it in the chat. I can make a comment because it's kind of a weird spelling. There we go. And it also does a great job of connecting the dots, as far as world history and religions go, and what happening beyond our perceived reality out in the heavens and stuff. I've read it several times, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, there are people that might read that book and
Nope, you there? Hello? Hello?
I hope you're still.
Yeah, I am. I'm sorry. You kind of glitched out. I don't know what happened.
I got kicked out of the app, and I had to come back. So you could think of a WASP as an allegory. It's a vehicle for a lot of great principles, and it has, the more you look into the actual histories that it presents, a lot of dots get connected. I know a lot of people that consider it to be extremely literal. I'm sort of in between. I don't know. It has a lot of great information for sure. Um, I'm happy to consider it literal or an allegory. I'm not really loyal to either one camp, but it does have a ton of great information. So,
Okay, and can you repeat the title of that first book again?
Escaping Eden, and the other one was Original Sin is a Lie.
Okay. All right. I'm going to look those up as soon as we get off here. Thank you for having the conversation. It's very nice speaking with you.
Yeah, thank you. I loved it. It was great. I hope you have a great night.